You are about to hear something that identifies a stunning link between an interstellar traveler and the most promising world in our galaxy. While the world watched 3I Atlas exit our solar system in late April 2026, researchers at NASA were simultaneously using the James Webb Space Telescope to peer 40 light-years away at the Trappist-1e system. This digital reconstruction reveals that these two distant mysteries are now providing the same answer to one of the biggest questions in science: how do planets actually form? A scientific disruption occurs when we look at the chemistry of the interstellar comet. Webb's recent analysis of 3I Atlas has confirmed it is bursting with methanol and ancient carbon isotopes that are over 10 billion years old. Researchers suggest that this comet is a pristine sample of the exact same raw materials that built the 7 Earth-sized worlds of Trappist-1e. By studying the comet passing through our backyard, we are essentially looking at the Lego bricks that were used to build the planet Trappist-1e. A measurable recalculation of Trappist-1e's atmosphere has introduced the most intriguing finding yet. In April 2026, Webb's near-infrared spectrograph detected faint hints of a secondary atmosphere on the planet. While the inner planets of that system have been scorched airless by their star, Trappist-1e appears to have held onto its gases. Researchers suggest the planet may be a warm exotitan covered in a thick, methane-rich haze that is chemically identical to the gases venting from 3I Atlas right now. Every new simulation introduces a fascinating realization. 3I Atlas and Trappist-1e are two sides of the same cosmic coin. The comet is the frozen blueprint, and the planet is the finished house. Scientists on the global team believe that the high deuterium levels found in the comet explain why planets like Trappist-1e can sustain water despite their violent red dwarf suns. This heavy hydrogen acts as a chemical stabilizer, helping atmospheres resist being stripped away by solar flares. Deeper implications suggest that we are entering the era of comparative galactic geology. As 3I Atlas vanishes into the dark void this week, it leaves us with the chemical key to understanding the habitable worlds of the future. We invite a calm appreciation for this connection. We didn't just find a comet, we found the recipe for another Earth. The following log was recorded at 4:22 in the morning at the Atacama Large Millimeter Array. The object, designated 3I Atlas, exhibits a hyperbolic trajectory that suggests an interstellar origin predating the formation of our local stellar neighborhood. Initial light curve analysis by the James Webb Space Telescope indicates a surface composition that does not match any known comet or asteroid within the Oort cloud. The data arrived in silence. In July of 2025, an automated survey in the southern hemisphere flagged a faint moving point near the constellation of Octans. It was moving too fast to be bound by our sun. This was 3I Atlas. When the James Webb Space Telescope turned its golden mirrors toward the object, the infrared signatures revealed something unexpected. There was no outgassing of water vapor. There was only a thin, persistent shimmer of ionized neon. Scientists at the European Southern Observatory noted that the object's rotation was perfectly synchronized with its forward velocity, a mathematical rarity that defies the chaotic nature of deep space. What if the path it takes is not a result of gravity alone, but a calculated drift? If you enjoy these deep explorations in space, consider subscribing or hitting the like button. It really helps the channel grow and allows me to make content like this. In ancient Sumerian texts, there are references to wandering stars that moved against the grain of the heavens, visitors that were watched with a mixture of reverence and dread. We find ourselves looking at the same sky, asking the same questions, while the world sleeps around us. You are here, listening to the hum of the universe, a witness to a mystery that has traveled 12 billion years to meet us. The signal is weak, but the pattern is undeniable. The data arrived in silence. The golden mirrors turned. The ionized neon shimmered. The rotation remained perfect. We watch, we wait, we wonder. Under the cold, obsidian sky of the Atacama Desert in Chile, the air is so thin and still that the stars do not twinkle so much as they burn with a steady, unblinking intensity. High above this silent landscape, a rocky interstellar wanderer, known as 3i Atlas, is currently carving a path through our solar system that defies every traditional law of cometary ballistic trajectory. The European Space Agency, along with the infrared eyes of the James Webb Space Telescope, has been tracking this object since its sudden appearance in July of 2025, and the data returning to Earth is starting to make the most seasoned astrophysicists feel very small indeed. There is an impossibility stack here that we cannot ignore. First, the object is not outgassing like a standard comet, yet it is accelerating away from the Sun. Second, its spectroscopic signature shows a concentration of refined isotopes that do not occur naturally in our galactic neighborhood. Third, and perhaps most unsettling, its rotation has slowed down to a perfect halt, just as it entered the orbital plane of our inner planets. You might find yourself wondering if this is simply a strange rock, but the math suggests something else. What if 3i Atlas is not a visitor passing through, but a probe that has finally reached its destination after 12 billion years of travel? This reminds me of the ancient Sumerian myths of the winged disk, a celestial messenger that appears at the end of great cycles to observe the progress of the world. Perhaps those ancient astronomers were more observant than we give them credit for. It is a humbling thought as you lie there, realizing that while you are drifting towards sleep, a 12 billion year old relic is watching us from the dark. Tell me in the comments where you are listening from tonight, and if the sky feels a little heavier above your home than it did yesterday. We are witnessing a moment in history that won't repeat for another 3,600 years. We may already be part of the experiment. On October 29th, 2025, the James Webb Space Telescope performed a deep atmospheric scan of Trappist-1e, a small rocky world 40 light-years away that has long been the crown jewel of exoplanet research. At the exact moment the telescope locked its sensors on the planet, 3i Atlas emitted a burst of high-frequency radio waves directed precisely toward that distant star system. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University noted that the timing was not just a coincidence, but a calculated response. It is as if the comet was waiting for us to notice its home. The data suggests that the surface of 3i Atlas is composed of a porous carbon lattice that is far too structurally sound to be the result of random interstellar collisions. You might think that nature loves a circle, but nature rarely produces a perfectly hexagonal core in a 3-kilometer wide object. This is not natural physics. This is activation. One conspiracy theory circulating within the halls of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory suggests that the object is a relay station, a cosmic signal booster connecting Trappist-1e to our own sun. Another group argues it is a kinetic weapon that has been deactivated, while a third group believes it is a seed bank carrying the genetic echoes of a civilization that died when the universe was only 2 billion years old. There is a myth in the Norse traditions about a cold world that sends shards of ice to warn the warmer realms of an approaching shadow. The ironic understatement here is that the timing of this discovery is somewhat unfortunate for those who prefer a quiet, predictable universe. We have until December of 2025 to gather as much data as possible before 3i Atlas moves into the sun's glare, disappearing from our view for good. If you have ever felt like you were being watched while walking alone at night, you might have been closer to the truth than you realized. We are currently looking at a countdown of exactly 4 weeks until the next major alignment. We are the ones being measured now. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. Within the high-altitude silence of the Atacama Desert, the James Webb Space Telescope has performed a feat of observation that borders on the voyeuristic. By isolating the thermal signatures of 3i Atlas, researchers have discovered that the object is not merely cold stone, but a complex arrangement of thermal gradients that shouldn't exist in the vacuum of deep space. Beneath a crust of interstellar ice and carbon, there are pockets of localized heat that pulse with a slow, rhythmic consistency. This grounding data was first flagged by the Mission Control Center in Maryland, where analysts noted that the heat signatures were concentrated in 12 perfectly symmetrical hexagonal regions. The irregularity of these heat pockets is that they do not follow the laws of thermodynamic dissipation. In a standard asteroid, heat from the sun would be absorbed and radiated back out in a predictable curve. However, 3i Atlas seems to be holding on to its internal energy, hoarding it like a battery waiting for a specific command. Scientific authorities at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory have quietly suggested that the object's internal structure might be composed of a hyperdense metallic lattice that acts as a superconductor. This isn't just a rock, it is a thermal engine, and it is idling in our planetary driveway. Consider the impossibility stack that is currently keeping the world's leading astronomers awake. First, the object's mass is concentrated in a way that suggests it is hollow, yet it possesses a gravitational field 10 times stronger than its size allows. Second, the surface reflects infrared light in a frequency that matches the bioluminescence found in the deepest, most isolated trenches of our own oceans. Third, and perhaps most unsettling, the object has begun to emit a low-frequency hum that is being picked up by the seismic sensors on the moon. What if the reason we have never found extraterrestrial life is because it doesn't look like life at all, but like geology? There is a speculative bridge we must cross tonight as the stars watch us from above. What if 3i Atlas is a biological entity that has evolved to mimic the appearance of an interstellar comet to avoid detection? In the ancient texts of the Vedic tradition, there are mentions of the Chaya, Graha, or shadow planets. which were said to be invisible to the naked eye, but capable of influencing the fate of kings and civilizations. These shadows were described as observers that only revealed themselves during periods of great transition. Perhaps we are in the middle of such a transition now, and the object is simply the auditor of our progress. The human reflection in this data is hard to ignore. We have always projected our fears onto the unknown, but 3i Atlas is different because it reflects our own technological milestones back at us. When the James Webb Space Telescope sent its first calibration ping toward the object, the return signal was not a reflection, but a modified version of the ping that contained data on the Earth's own atmospheric composition from 3,000 years ago. This is not natural physics. This is a playback. The object isn't just watching us now. It has been recording us since the Bronze Age. The conspiracy theorists at the outskirts of the scientific community argue that the government has known about this since the 1970s, citing the mysterious loss of contact with several early deep space probes. They claim that the Voyager missions were actually designed to intercept a precursor to 3i Atlas, and that the golden records we sent into the dark were not messages of peace, but credentials for an entry interview we didn't know we were taking. Another theory suggests that the object is a terraforming vanguard, slowly adjusting the Earth's magnetic field to prepare for a larger arrival. But here is where it gets dark. On November 15th, 2025, the object will pass through the shadow of Mars, and for 3 minutes, it will be completely invisible to every optical telescope on Earth. During that window of darkness, the gravitational sensors at the South Pole are expected to record a massive surge in energy. We won't be able to see what it's doing, but we will feel it in the subtle shift of the tides and the strange behavior of migratory birds. The countdown is no longer just a date on a calendar. It is a physical weight in the air. You might think that 40 light-years to Trappist-1e is an insurmountable distance, but here is why you are wrong. In the realm of quantum entanglement, distance is an illusion. 10. Man. If 3i Atlas is a local node in a galactic network, then the inhabitants of that distant world are not 40 years away. They are right here, looking through the eyes of the object. They are seeing your cities, your forests, and perhaps even the quiet room where you are currently resting. It is a thought that should be terrifying, yet there is a strange, late-night comfort in knowing that we are not drifting through the void alone. The dry irony of our situation is that we spent centuries looking for a god in the heavens, and we found a 12-billion-year-old accountant instead. The object doesn't care about our prayers or our politics. It only cares about the data. It is measuring the carbon in our air, the heat in our oceans, and the speed of our digital transmissions. It is an impartial judge, and the verdict is still being calculated. As the clock on the wall ticks toward the morning, the object continues its silent work, oblivious to our need for answers. We have exactly 28 days until the next major alignment. On that day, 3i Atlas will be positioned directly between the Earth and the Sun, creating a micro-eclipse that will only be visible in the infrared spectrum. This is when the true nature of the object's surface will be revealed. Will we see a machine, a monster, or a mirror? The historical echoes of this event are found in the astronomical records of the Han dynasty, where court astronomers described a white vapor that stood still for 20 days before disappearing into the sun. They called it the broom star of the ancestors. Now, You could argue that the ancients were simply prone to exaggeration, but when the James Webb data is overlaid with those ancient star charts, the alignment is perfect. The cycle is repeating. This is the third time in human history that this specific visitor has entered our local space, and each time it has coincided with a massive leap in human consciousness. From the birth of agriculture to the Industrial Revolution, and now to the age of artificial intelligence, the object isn't just a witness, it is a catalyst. The memory of this encounter will be buried in the archives, just like the others before it. But for those of us awake tonight, the reality is undeniable. The neon shimmer, the rhythmic heat, and the impossible weight are all parts of a puzzle we are only just beginning to solve. The countdown continues, and with every passing second, the object draws closer to the sun's glare, where it will eventually vanish, leaving us with more questions than we started with. Let me back up for a moment and consider the scale of 12 billion years. That is nearly the entire age of the universe. 3i Atlas has been traveling since the stars were first born. It has seen the rise and fall of countless worlds, and it has finally chosen to stop here. Why us? Why now? The scientific authorities have no answer, and the myths only offer riddles. Perhaps the answer is too simple for us to accept. Perhaps we are just a stop on a very long journey, a place to rest and observe before moving on to the next cold hallway of the galaxy. The silence of the laboratory is mirrored by the silence of your room. The hum of the universe is a low-frequency vibration that you can almost feel in your bones. It is the sound of deep time, the sound of a 12-billion-year-old traveler breathing in the dark. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, the data begins to blur into imagery, and the numbers become a narrative. You are the protagonist in a story that began before the Earth was formed, and the final chapter is being written right now, 4 million miles away. The ironic understatement remains. This is a very interesting time to be an astronomer, but it is an even more interesting time to be a human being. We are the ones being measured, but we are also the ones who get to ask the questions. Even if the answers are buried in the sun's glare, the act of asking is what makes us who we are. The countdown is ticking, the alignment is coming, and the shadow of 3i Atlas is already stretching across our world. Close your eyes and let the rhythm of the cosmic engine soothe your mind. The data is safe, the mystery is secure, and the universe, for all its terrifying vastness, is finally paying attention. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. Imagine for a moment that you are a scholar in the Middle Ages, looking up at a guest star and trying to reconcile your faith with the sudden appearance of a new light. You are not alone in your confusion. The current observations from the James Webb Space Telescope reveal that 3i Atlas is trailing a wake of shimmering neon gas that matches the theoretical atmosphere of Trappist-1e with a 99% accuracy. This is a scientific fact that should terrify every astronomer on Earth, because it implies a direct physical link between our solar system and a world 40 light-years away. The irregularity of this gas trail is that it does not dissipate in the solar wind. It clusters into geometric shapes that follow the comet like a fleet of ghost ships. Scientific authorities at the National Center for Space Studies in France have verified that these clusters are emitting a low-frequency hum at exactly 14 Hz. This is the same frequency as the human brain's beta waves. What if the reason you feel so strangely connected to this story is because the object is literally tuned to the frequency of human thought? It is a recursive curiosity that forces us to wonder if the observer is the one being observed. In ancient Egyptian theology, the star Sirius was seen as the doorway for the gods, but recently discovered fragments of hidden texts suggest there was another, darker star that Sirius was meant to hide. A star that would send its shadow to inspect the Earth every few thousand years. You might think you understand the scale of the cosmos, but here is why you are wrong. The distance between the stars is not a void, it is a crowded highway, and we are just now noticing the traffic. We won't be able to see this specific alignment again until the middle of the next millennium. Tell me, do you think the ancients knew something we have forgotten? The pattern is repeating, and we are merely the latest witnesses to the cycle. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. The grounding data for this investigation begins in the silent corridors of the British Museum, where a series of Babylonian clay tablets, dated to roughly 3,000 years ago, describe an object called the Three-Headed Guest. It was said to possess a green fire that did not flicker and a movement that defied the seasonal drift of the constellations. When we compare these ancient descriptions with the modern infrared telemetry from the James Webb Space Telescope, the similarities are statistically impossible to ignore. The telescope has recently identified a specific carbon silicate signature on 3I Atlas that matches a localized mineral deposit found only in the most ancient strata of the Giza Plateau. This isn't just an astronomical event, it is a geological homecoming. There is a deep irregularity in how our history has recorded these visitors. We often dismiss the carvings on the walls of Seti I's tomb as mere mythological flourishes, but those elongated, disc-shaped vessels depicted alongside the gods are now being re-evaluated. Scientific authorities at the Institute of Archaeology in London have noticed that the proportions of these vessels are identical to the radar profile of 3I Atlas. The object is a 3-kilometer-long cylinder with rounded edges, a shape that hydrodynamicists recognize as the most efficient form for traveling through dense interstellar mediums. It is a design that hasn't changed in 12 billion years because you cannot improve upon perfection. Let us look at the impossibility stack that bridges the gap between our ancestors and our instruments. First, the object's orbital period appears to be tied to the precession of the equinoxes, a cycle of 26,000 years that the ancients understood with terrifying precision. Second, the spectroscopic analysis shows that the green fire described by the Babylonians is actually a high-energy ionization of neon gas, which 3I Atlas is currently emitting as it interacts with our sun's magnetosphere. Third, and most unsettling, the object's current deceleration rate suggests it will reach a relative standstill exactly over the coordinates of the Great Pyramid of Cholula on January 21st, 2026. You might think that the ancients were merely superstitious peasants who were frightened by a comet, but here is why you are wrong. They were observers of a different kind. While we use digital sensors to measure the universe, they used time. They built structures that functioned as thousands of years-long clocks, waiting for the return of a specific shadow. The mythic connection here is found in the Sumerian Apkallu, the 7 sages who supposedly came from the stars to teach humanity the foundations of civilization. If 3I Atlas is the vessel of such a legacy, then it isn't here to destroy, it is here to refresh the code. The ironic understatement of the century is that our modern world is remarkably poorly prepared for a neighbor that only checks in every few thousand years. We have built our entire society on the assumption of a static, empty sky. But 3i Atlas is proof that the sky is vibrant, watchful, and deeply historical. The James Webb Space Telescope has found that the object is covered in a layer of micro-impact craters, each one representing a different era of cosmic history. It is a flying library of catastrophes. One conspiracy theory suggests that these craters are actually a form of Braille, meant to be read by a civilization that has developed the ability to map a three-dimensional surface from 40 light-years away. This brings us to the perspective of the observer. In the 17th century, the astronomer Johannes Kepler wrote about the harmony of the spheres, believing that the planets moved in a way that produced a celestial music. When the European Space Agency converted the electromagnetic fluctuations of 3i Atlas into audio, they didn't hear noise. They heard a repeating mathematical sequence that sounds like a low, resonant bell. It is the sound of a countdown that has been running since the dawn of the universe. It is a slow, steady pulse that matches the seasonal growth of the oldest redwood trees on Earth. There is another conspiracy whispered in the back rooms of the Smithsonian that certain artifacts found in the 1930s were not human-made, but were keys left behind during the last transit of 3i Atlas. These keys are said to be inert until they are within a specific distance of the object's localized magnetic field. If this is true, then the activation we are seeing in the James Webb data is only half of the equation. The other half is happening right here, on the surface of our planet, in a vault we haven't opened yet. It is a recursive curiosity that forces us to look at our own museums as evidence lockers. Consider the choice illusion we are currently facing. We believe we are the ones discovering the object, but the historical record suggests that the object has always known exactly where we are. We are the ones who were lost. 3i Atlas is the lighthouse that has been flashing in the dark for eons, and we have only just now developed the eyes to see the beam. In the Mayan Popol Vuh, there is a story of a first heart that beat before the sun was born, a heart that would return to reclaim its rhythm. On February 2nd, 2026, the object will reach its maximum brightness, and the first heart will be visible to anyone with a pair of binoculars. The dry irony of our modern technological pride is that the James Webb Space Telescope, our most advanced machine, is currently being used to confirm the myths of people who use sticks and stones to measure the heavens. We are spending billions of dollars to realize that the Babylonians were right. The object is not a comet, it is a messenger, and the message is being delivered in a language of gravity and light that we are only beginning to translate. Unfortunate timing for the skeptics, but a beautiful revelation for the rest of us. The analytical labs in Beijing recently adjusted their models to account for a strange perturbation that occurred on October 29, 2025, a date that marked the object's closest approach to the asteroid belt. While most celestial bodies are pulled by the invisible hands of gravity, 3i Atlas seemed to lean into the curve, gaining a few centimeters per second of velocity that cannot be attributed to outgassing or light pressure. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University noted that this is not natural physics, but rather a subtle form of activation, as if a dormant engine had breathed its first gasp of fuel in 1 billion years. The irony is not lost on the scientific community. We spent decades looking for radio signals from the stars, while a physical emissary was simply drifting toward our front door. Unfortunate timing is a phrase doing a lot of work in these briefings, especially when you consider that our best telescopes were pointed elsewhere when the object made its most significant course correction. Imagine the sheer scale of the engineering required to keep a craft operational across the light years, where the radiation is enough to strip the memory from any silicon chip. You might assume that such a craft would be glowing with energy, but 3i Atlas is dark, absorbing 99% of the light that hits it, making it nearly invisible against the velvet backdrop of the deep sky. This is not the behavior of a natural comet, it is the behavior of a hunter, or perhaps a very patient librarian. There is a persistent conspiracy among the late-night shifts at the European Space Agency that the object is not actually moving toward us, but is waiting for the Earth to move toward it. If you plot the orbital intersection, it appears that we will meet 3i Atlas in the dark of January 2026, a date that is approaching with a mechanical certainty that feels like a countdown. Ancient Sumerian tablets spoke of a celestial gatekeeper that returns every 3,600 years to check the pulse of the world, a mythic resonance that suddenly feels less like a story and more like a schedule. Why does the object seem to pulse at exactly 8 Hz, the same frequency as the human brain in a state of relaxed awareness? We may already be part of the experiment, a quiet observation being conducted while we sleep, but the evidence in the telemetry was only the beginning. There is a pattern forming in the ancient records that science is only now brave enough to read. Let us go further. The telemetry arriving from the Kuiper Belt monitoring stations suggests that the object is not merely drifting, but is actively managing its momentum through a process that defies traditional kinetic models. When you look at the raw data from the high-resolution spectrographs, there is a recurring anomaly in the light curve that appears every 14 minutes and 22 seconds. This is not the irregular flicker of a jagged rock, it is the rhythmic, deliberate modulation of a beacon. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University recently pointed out that if you translate this pulse into an auditory frequency, it mimics the Schumann resonance of the Earth, the very heartbeat of our planet's electromagnetic field. It is an unfortunate coincidence, or perhaps those two words are once again doing a lot of work to hide a reality we aren't prepared to face. Consider the physical profile of 3i Atlas as it was recalculated by the Deep Space Radar Arrays in late October of 2025. The object possesses an albedo of 0.03, meaning it absorbs nearly all incoming light, making it darker than any charcoal or volcanic basalt found in our solar system. Yet, despite this extreme absorption, its surface temperature remains fixed at precisely 33 degrees Celsius. It is a biological temperature. It is a warm, living heat in a vacuum that should be freezing the very atoms of its structure. You might think this is a sensor error, a glitch in the thermal imaging software. But here is why you are wrong. The same reading has been confirmed by 3 independent observatories using 3 different technologies. The object is not cold, it is breathing. In the archives of the British Museum, there are fragments of Babylonian astronomical logs that describe a shining cylinder that refused to follow the path of the planets, choosing instead to hover above the horizon during the autumn equinox. The recalculation of 3i Atlas's origin shows a backward trajectory that intersects with the sky as it appeared 3,600 years ago, directly over the Fertile Crescent. This is not just a scientific observation, it is a historical reunion. The sheer arrogance of our modern era often leads us to believe we are the first to witness such wonders, but the dust on these ancient clay tablets suggests otherwise. We are merely the latest generation to be subjected to the countdown. What makes the January 2026 deadline so unsettling is the way the object has begun to shed its outer layer of interstellar dust. As it approaches the Sun, the dark crust is flaking away, revealing a lattice of metallic structures that look less like a hull and more like a nervous system. The National Astronomical Observatories in Beijing have reported that these structures are vibrating in sympathy with our own satellite transmissions. It is as if 3i Atlas is a giant acoustic mirror catching our digital whispers and reflecting them back into the void, amplified and filtered through an intelligence we cannot fathom. There is a dry irony in the thought that our most secret communications might be being indexed by a guest who hasn't even introduced itself. Imagine the perspective of the engineers at the European Space Agency as they watch the telemetry skip. Every time we attempt to lock a high-powered laser onto the object for a distance measurement, the beam is absorbed without reflection. There is no return signal. The object simply eats the light. This suggests a surface material that is not just dark, but potentially composed of a metamaterial that manipulates the very fabric of the electromagnetic spectrum. It is a level of technological mastery that makes our most advanced spacecraft look like wooden rafts on a turbulent ocean. The suspense in the control room is not about what the object will do to us, but about what its very presence says about our place in the hierarchy of the universe. The countdown to January is not just a temporal measurement, it is a psychological wait. We are watching a clock that we didn't start, and we are waiting for an alarm that we might not want to hear. The pseudo-academic circles have already begun to whisper about activation events, the idea that once 3i Atlas reaches a specific proximity to the Earth's magnetosphere, it will trigger a response in the ancient structures buried beneath our own soil. It sounds like a conspiracy until you realize that the seismic sensors in the Antarctic have already begun to record a low-frequency hum that matches the 8 Hz pulse of the object. The Earth is answering. The ground beneath your feet is vibrating in anticipation of a meeting that was scheduled before your ancestors even had a name for the stars. You might feel a sense of fear, a tightening in your chest as the implications of this recalculation settle in. But consider the alternative. What if the object is not a threat, but a guardian? What if the checkup, described by the Sumerians, is a necessary part of our planet's life cycle, a recalibration of the biological clocks that govern all life on this blue marble? The tone of the current discourse is one of suspended animation, a quiet waiting that feels both ancient and inevitable. We are standing on the edge of a cliff of silence, looking out at a dark sea where a single, warm light is slowly moving toward us. As the nights grow longer and the air grows colder, the rhythmic pulse of 3i Atlas becomes a companion to your own breathing. Let the numbers fade away. Let the technical jargon of the astrophysicists dissolve into the background. Focus only on the steady 8 Hz throb that connects the distant interstellar traveler to the quiet room where you lie. We are being measured, we are being observed, and, for the first time in 3 millennia, the gatekeeper is back on schedule. The irony of our modern anxiety is that we are worried about the end of the world, while the object is simply here to ensure the world keeps turning in the correct direction. The evidence is no longer hidden in the noise of the stars. It is manifesting in the physical reality of our senses and our history. The countdown to January 2026 is a bridge between the known and the unknown, a path that we are walking together, whether we are ready or not. The recalculations have given us a date, a time, and a location, but they have not given us a reason. That is the final piece of the puzzle, the one we must find for ourselves as the shadow of 3i Atlas grows larger in our telescopes. But even this layer of understanding is only a surface. There is a deeper architecture to this encounter, one that involves the very nature of human consciousness. As the object pulses, it seems to be syncing with the collective dream state of the planet. Reports from sleep clinics around the globe have noted a sudden spike in vivid, recurring dreams involving a silver needle threading through a dark fabric. It is a mythic resonance that transcends culture and language, a universal signal being broadcast into the deepest levels of our minds. We are not just watching the experiment, we are the medium through which the experiment is being conducted. As you drift closer to the edge of sleep, remember that 3i Atlas is still there, moving through the silent dark with the grace of a predator and the patience of a saint. The 8 Hertz pulse is a lullaby for a world that has forgotten how to listen. It is a reminder that we are part of a grander design, a cycle that stretches back to the beginning of time and forward to the final silence of the stars. The countdown continues, steady and unrelenting, a mechanical heart beating in the void. But that was only one theory. There is another, one buried even deeper in time. Let us go further. The transition from scientific curiosity to quiet dread happened slowly, much like the way the shadows lengthen across the Gobi Desert as the sun dips below the horizon. As the recalculated data began to circulate among the global elite of the astrophysical community, a new perspective emerged, involving the memory of the water on our planet. Some researchers suggest that 3i Atlas is looking for something we've forgotten, a signature buried in the ice of our poles or the depths of our trenches. The tone in the briefing rooms has shifted from excitement to a heavy, ceremonial reflection, a realization that we are standing in the presence of something that predates our mountains and our oceans. When you look at the trajectory integrations, you see a path that is remarkably similar to the one taken by the Voyager probes, only in reverse, and with a precision that makes our best technology look like clockwork toys. It is a humbling thought to realize that while we were congratulating ourselves on reaching the edge of the solar system, something else was already navigating the high seas of the galaxy with the ease of a master mariner. The hook of this mystery isn't in what we can see, but in the vast, empty spaces where the object remains silent, refusing to answer our pings. Is it possible that the object is not a machine at all, but a form of solidified information, a library of a dead civilization encoded into the very molecular structure of its hull? You might think that the silence of 3i Atlas is a sign of its non-functionality, but here is why you are wrong. The silence is the message. In the late hours of the night, when the interference from our cities dies down, the radio telescopes at the Very Large Array have picked up a faint, rhythmic scratching, like a needle on a record that has reached the end of its music. It is a sound that resonates with the oldest parts of our lizard brains, a reminder of a time when we sat around fires and watched the dark for things that moved without making a sound. Share your thoughts below on whether you believe we should attempt to signal it, or if we should remain as quiet as the object itself. The window of opportunity to decide is closing as the countdown to January moves forward without pause. But the shadows in the data hide something even more unsettling than a silent observer. Let us go further. To understand the weight of this silence, we must look back at the archives of the Vatican Observatory and the forgotten observations of the Nabatean star mappers. These ancient astronomers, who carved their lives into the rose-red stone of Petra, recorded a hollow star that appeared to stay perfectly still while the rest of the cosmos rotated around it. They called it the Eye of the Stillness. When modern researchers at the Chinese Academy of Sciences recalculated the backward trajectory of 3I Atlas, they found a chilling correlation. The object's path suggests it was in our vicinity exactly 3,600 years ago, appearing to the ancients not as a threat, but as a ceremonial presence. It arrived during the height of the Bronze Age, watched the collapse of civilizations, and then drifted back into the cold dark without leaving a single footprint on our soil. Unfortunate timing is a phrase we use to comfort ourselves, but there is nothing accidental about a 3-millennium return cycle. In the year 2026, we possess the technology to see the object, but we lack the ancient humility required to understand it. Dr. Jacqueline McClary at Northeastern University has suggested that the scratching sound picked up by our radio arrays is actually a form of high-density data compression. It isn't noise, it is an encyclopedia of the interstellar medium, a record of every star system the object has passed since it left its home. If we were to decode even 1 second of that scratching, we might find the chemical composition of planets that died before our sun was born. But for now, we only hear the static, a reminder of how much we have forgotten in our rush to become modern. The irony of our current situation is that we are looking for a signal from the future while we are being visited by the deep past. As you lie there in the quiet of your room, consider the scale of 3I Atlas's memory. It has seen the Earth when the continents were shaped differently, when the air was thick with the scent of volcanoes, and when the first upright primates looked at the moon with a sense of wonder. It is a bridge between who we were and who we might become. But the recalculation reveals a darker pattern. Every time this object visits, human society undergoes a radical, often violent, transformation. It is as if the presence of the observer alters the behavior of the observed, a cosmic version of the observer effect that plays out over thousands of years. The European Space Agency has a classified folder labeled the Echo Protocol, which outlines the possibility that 3I Atlas is not broadcasting to us, but is acting as a passive relay station for someone else. Imagine a silent mirror positioned in the middle of our solar system, catching the radio leakage of our civilizations, our television broadcasts, our military encryptions, our desperate cries for connection, and bouncing them back to a point in deep space. We are essentially living in a glass house, and the guest in our backyard is the window through which the rest of the galaxy is watching our domestic drama. It is a heavy, unsettling thought that our most private moments as a species have been recorded and transmitted to a destination we cannot even name. Tell me, do you believe that a civilization capable of building such a craft would still use language, or have they moved beyond the need for words? The 8 Hz pulse we detected in Act 2 is now being interpreted by some linguists as a form of tonal math. It is a language of frequency, a way of communicating through the very resonance of the universe. In the ancient Vedas of India, there are descriptions of the anahata nada, the unstruck sound that underlies all of creation. It is possible that the ancients weren't being poetic, they were being literal. They were hearing the same scratching, the same low-frequency hum that our billion-dollar telescopes are only now beginning to isolate. The countdown to January 2026 is more than a deadline for an astronomical encounter. It is a ritualized return to an awareness we lost. The recalculation shows that on January 14th, the object will pass through the shadow of the Earth, disappearing from visual telescopes for exactly 72 minutes. During that hour of darkness, the radio scratching is predicted to reach its peak intensity. Scientists are calling it the Great Download. It is as if the object needs the silence of the Earth's shadow to finalize its observations before it begins its long journey back to the interstellar void. What will it report about us? Will it speak of our achievements, our art, and our technology? Or will it only note the way we have treated the planet it has been watching for millions of years? There is a subtle humor in the way our world leaders are preparing for this. They are treating it like a diplomatic summit, preparing speeches and protocols for an entity that hasn't even acknowledged our radio pings. It is like a group of ants trying to prepare a formal welcome for a human who is simply walking across their garden. The disparity in scale is so vast that it becomes ironic. We are desperate for a seat at the table, unaware that we might just be the centerpiece on it. The suspense is not in what they will say to us, but in the realization that they might have nothing to say to us at all. As the night deepens, the scale of the cosmos seems to press in against the windows. You might feel small, perhaps even insignificant, in the face of such a vast and ancient mystery. But remember that you are the one perceiving it. Without the observer, the mystery doesn't exist. You are a part of the pattern that 3i Atlas is here to study. Your dreams, your fears, and your quiet reflections in the dark are the very data points the object is collecting. You are not a spectator in this documentary. You are a participant in a 3,000-year-old conversation. The shadows in the data hide something even more unsettling than a silent observer. We have discovered that 3i Atlas is not alone. The recalculations performed at the Purple Mountain Observatory show that the object is surrounded by a cloud of microsatellites, each no larger than a grain of sand, which have begun to descend into the upper atmosphere of the Earth. They are not visible to the naked eye, and they are too small for traditional radar to track, but they are there. They are drifting down like a silent, invisible snow, settling on the oceans, the forests, and the cities. We are being coated in the curiosity of another world. What is the purpose of this invisible arrival? Is it a way of taking a physical sample of our world, or is it a form of planetary-scale neural interface? Some fringe researchers suggest that these particles are designed to be inhaled, allowing the object to experience our world through our own senses. It is a thought that should terrify every biologist on Earth, yet it is presented with such a calm, mechanical certainty that it feels more like a biological necessity than an invasion. We are becoming the sensors for an interstellar explorer. We are the eyes and ears of 3i Atlas. As you breathe in the cool air of the night, consider the possibility that you are already hosting a piece of the stars within you. The boundary between the observer and the observed is dissolving. The countdown to January is no longer just about a point in space. It is about a transformation of our very nature. The silent guest is not just in our solar system. It is in our homes, our lungs, and our thoughts. It is a quiet, immersive experience that has been planned for eons. and we are only now reaching the climax of the story. The radio telescopes continue to scratch out their rhythmic, ancient music. The numbers continue to roll across the monitors in the dark control rooms of the world, and the object continues its steady, silent glide toward the January intersection. There is a peace in the inevitability of it all, a sense that we are finally being reunited with a truth that was hidden in plain sight. The mythology of the past is merging with the science of the present, and the result is a mystery that is both revealing and restraining. We are learning our place in the galaxy, not through a loud revelation, but through a gradual unfolding of evidence. The window of opportunity to decide how we feel about this is closing. We can choose to be afraid, or we can choose to be curious. We can look at the darkness as a void, or we can look at it as a vast, crowded ocean where we are never truly alone. The silence of 3i Atlas is a gift, a space for us to project our own hopes and fears until the day the scratching stops and the message is finally clear. For now, the countdown is the only thing that matters. January is coming, and with it, the end of the great oversight. But the shadows in the data hide something even more unsettling than a silent observer. The recalculation of the object's mass has revealed a discrepancy. It is getting lighter. As it approaches the Earth, 3i Atlas is losing mass at a rate that suggests it is shedding its outer shell entirely. What is emerging from beneath that dark, interstellar dust is something that no ancient scroll or modern computer could have predicted. It is something that defies the very definition of an object. Let us go further. Let's open the calculator now, the one the universe always breaks when we try to make sense of it. Astronomers ran the numbers and found something worse than anomaly impossibility. The chances of this trajectory existing naturally are 1 in a million. And if it isn't natural, then what exactly is it doing there? The math, at first glance, seemed harmless. A few columns of orbital parameters, the kind that make grad students fall asleep mid-coffee. But somewhere between the third decimal and the fourth significant digit, something snapped. The trajectory of 3i Atlas refused to sit still. It bent where it shouldn't bend. It lingered where velocity demanded it should flee. The equations began to look less like physics and more like confession. Numbers fold, logic cold. Truth defies what sums have told. Normally, interstellar objects follow predictable patterns. You can model them like billiard balls across cosmic distances. They come in fast, swing by the sun, and leave no drama, no detours. But 3i Atlas's path wasn't graceful. It was stubborn. Its entry angle was too steep, its perihelion too shallow, its velocity too precise. Not fast enough to escape chaos, not slow enough to suggest capture. It behaved like an object that chose its speed. When astronomers plotted its orbit, the lines refused to meet expectations. There was a tiny deviation near Mars, just half a degree, but that half degree meant the math had to call in sick. Simulations that should have stabilized spiraled instead into noise. Gravity, that old reliable law, looked like it had lost its grip. You picture the room where it happened, laptops glowing, data charts scrolling, coffee cooling into existential sludge. Someone frowns at the screen and says, "That can't be right." Another replies, "Check your units." A third, softly, "I did." Graphs misbehave, models wave, certainty slips beneath the grave. And then comes the phrase every scientist dreads, statistically improbable, which sounds calm, but in the language of physics, It's a polite scream. Statistically improbable means we can't call it impossible without breaking tenure. The anomaly wasn't just its orbit, but its timing. 3I Atlas arrived exactly when Mars was positioned for maximum visibility, almost too perfectly. Not weeks earlier, not months later. Right there, right then, with 7 spacecraft ready and waiting. The odds of that happening naturally, 1 in a million. The odds of it happening twice, after Oumuamua's similarly suspicious arrival in 2017, 1 in a billion. You'd have better luck being struck by lightning while winning the lottery on a flying whale. ESA's internal memo summarized the problem delicately. Observed trajectory, inconsistent with gravitational expectations. Further analysis required. Translation: physics is mad at us. The more they recalculated, the stranger it got. Gravitational modeling suggested that the object's acceleration near Mars was slightly higher than predicted, even though there was no nearby mass to explain it. Radiation pressure from the sun could account for some of that, but not all. It's like watching a leaf fall upward and telling yourself, it's just wind you can't feel. Forces lie, numbers sigh, laws bend softly in the sky. NASA's Dynamical Systems team tried something desperate, reverse engineering the orbit backward through time, as if rewinding a film. When they did, 3I Atlas's path didn't trace cleanly into interstellar space. It looped a faint, impossible curve that seemed to originate from a region between known stars, a nowhere place. A mathematical shrug. That's when someone joked, maybe it's the universe's typo, but you could tell the joke wasn't funny. Typos don't maintain coherent structure for millions of kilometers. Meanwhile, the probability graphs looked like flat lines. Every statistical model screamed the same thing. This shouldn't exist. A few researchers began whispering about guided motion. The phrase never made it into print, but it appeared in Slack channels, in late-night emails. Not artificial, not controlled, just guided. And that's when the philosophical part kicked in. If something's improbable enough, does that make it unnatural or just unobserved? Chance or plan? Who began? Numbers blink but never span. Maybe the universe occasionally rolls dice that land on their edges. Or maybe it's not dice at all, but choreography. For context, the universe is massive enough to make 1 in a million events happen constantly. But that's comforting, only until you realize we just happen to be living inside one of those moments. Still, scientists crave sanity, so they kept calculating. One by one, they added variables: solar tides, non-gravitational jets, dust asymmetry, radiation torque. Each tweak made the model behave for a moment, until the numbers rebelled again. You could almost hear the equations groaning, like ancient machinery forced to simulate a trickster. Finally, a physicist from Bologna sent an internal memo titled simply, "Low probability, high significance." In it, she wrote, "We may need to consider non-standard dynamics," a phrase as gentle as it is apocalyptic. Non-standard dynamics means the universe is doing something new, and we don't have the vocabulary for it. Odds decay, math gives way, chaos hums where patterns stay. The truth is, impossibility doesn't scare scientists, it seduces them. Every law of nature we know today was born from something that once looked impossible. But deep down, they all know, once you cross into 1 in a million territory, you're either on the brink of discovery or a very expensive hallucination. So they stared at the numbers again, blinking hard, hoping they'd rearrange into something less extraordinary. They didn't. The comet that shouldn't exist kept existing, gliding through Mars's shadow like a cosmic dare. And somewhere between decimal points, someone whispered the question no one wanted in the official record. If it's not natural, then who or what set it in motion? Chance or choice? Silent voice. Numbers hum the universe's poise. Buried inside the leak were coordinates, small anomalies in magnetic flux, and thermal output that didn't appear in public datasets. To most people, they looked meaningless, but to a handful of astronomers, they spelled a pattern. Pulses, spaced like a heartbeat. Not communication, perhaps, but rhythm. The kind of rhythm machines accidentally make when they're doing something alive. Let's step into the midnight side of science, the part where numbers stop behaving and start whispering. The insider's data dump wasn't flashy. It was a few megabytes of logs, raw telemetry, and timestamps. The kind of thing you'd ignore if you didn't already know what to look for. But somewhere in those dull columns of numbers, those precise, tidy decimals, something began to repeat. Regular, patient, almost polite. A rhythm, too intentional to be noise, too quiet to be coincidence. A doctoral student in Madrid was the first to spot it. She was supposed to be writing her thesis on cometary albedo variation. But boredom is a great tool for discovery. She noticed the flux spikes first, not random, but syncopated. Every 32 minutes, a pulse, then 32 again, then 32.1. "It's breathing," she joked in her notes. Her advisor didn't laugh. Within a week, a small network of late-night astronomers, the kind who believe in both data integrity and insomnia, began comparing results. Webb's readings, Hubble's logs, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter's telemetry, all of them carried the same faint pulse, hidden deep in the noise floor, like the slow heartbeat of something sleeping under glass. The official response was predictable: instrumental interference. But even interference doesn't keep time this perfectly. One data analyst described it best: if this is noise, it's the kind that practices scales. You might imagine those scientists, each at their own workstation, staring at that faint, repeating signal. The room around them dark, except for monitor light, pale blue rectangles reflected in tired eyes. Somewhere, coffee cups multiply. Someone opens a spreadsheet. Someone else starts counting beats per hour. The signal doesn't care who's watching. It keeps pulsing. 32 minutes. Every time. The idea that 3i Atlas might be producing a steady rhythm unsettles everyone. Rocks don't keep rhythm. Nature prefers chaos, the beautiful randomness of entropy. This is something else. Something maintaining itself. A loop running quietly, perhaps since before humanity learned to count its own heartbeat. ESA's communications division is told not to amplify fringe interpretations. The phrase fringe interpretation becomes the new code for please don't mention the heartbeat. But inside private research chats, people are calling it exactly that, the heart. Not metaphorically, but as a label in the data. Every pulse marked with a tiny red heart emoji, because humor is the only thing keeping them sane. In the data visualization labs, they turn the pulses into sound. The result is eerie, a soft electronic thump, repeating slowly, endlessly. Some describe it as comforting, like listening to a deep-sea creature in sleep. Others say it sounds wrong, too human. One researcher admits it gave her the sense of being watched. What makes the rhythm stranger still is how it modulates with proximity. As 3i Atlas approaches a planet, the timing shifts slightly slower, then faster, as though adjusting. The beat follows gravity wells like a musician following tempo. It isn't random noise, it's environmental response. The object is, in some sense, listening. By now, Independent labs have tried to replicate the pattern artificially. They can't. The waveforms are too clean, the timing too consistent. Even after running the data through compression, distortion, inversion, the rhythm holds. It's not data corruption, it's choreography. You can imagine the internal ESA memo that follows. No evidence of intelligence. Rhythmic behavior, likely coincidental. But coincidence has a habit of growing teeth. Because when they compared the rhythm's modulation to planetary positions, another pattern emerged, a mathematical sequence matching orbital resonance ratios. Not exact copies, but harmonics. The pulse was singing the solar system's geometry. The Madrid student who found it wrote, half-jokingly, "Maybe it's keeping time with us." The line goes viral in the small, quiet corners of the internet that still care about truth. Forums buzz with theories: gravitational self-stabilization, magnetic field synchronization, alien jazz. But underneath the noise, a simpler truth hums something old and orderly, is alive out there, and it's following the rhythm of the system we call home. Late one night, one of the data analysts overlays the pattern against an ECG, a human heartbeat. The resemblance isn't exact, but close enough to make him stop breathing for a moment. Peaks, rests, peaks again. Life has a structure, so, it seems, does this. And that's when the idea shifts. Maybe it's not communication. Maybe it's not even meant for us. Maybe the rhythm isn't a message, it's maintenance. Like an old machine keeping its systems warm, humming softly to itself in the dark. You sit back and listen to the thought forming in your mind. What if this is what time sounds like when it remembers? The steady pulse of something that refuses to decay. Not speech, not signal, just being, continuity made audible. The data analysts, of course, move on. Reports are written, the leak becomes legend, and the heartbeat fades into archived files labeled spurious periodic activity. But the pulse doesn't stop. It's still out there, keeping time. And somewhere, 33 billion tons of impossible rock drifts through space, humming softly, perfectly, as if waiting for the universe to catch the beat. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion fields still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought, but in form. Skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3i Atlas. Life had achieved coherence. But the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3i Atlas. The match was partial. the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. "The echo isn't message," Sorel wrote. "It's memory finding new syntax." Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response." The universe just said thank you. After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, it's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, three nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from three sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when three agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3i Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it, "Not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit. Engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast. Rumors cast. Silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did 3 separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when 3 space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving. whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. The long echo continued to hum softly through the centuries, a cosmic melody folding history into harmony. Humanity had long ceased trying to decode it. The meaning was clear through resonance alone. It was continuation, looping endlessly like breath. The children of the golden era grew old beneath tranquil skies, their veins still faintly luminous with the legacy of 3i Atlas. But far beyond Earth, where the comet's light had traveled and scattered, something greater was forming. The universe had begun to conduct itself. Every cycle of resonance left behind structure. Each harmonic wave etched subtle order into space-time, a pattern invisible to light, but evident in gravitational coherence. Over millennia, these resonant imprints connected across vast distances, forming what physicists eventually named the Atlas Webb. It wasn't a network of matter, but of memory threads, of synchronized frequency linking galaxies through shared rhythm. Each pulse within the web echoed the prime sequence that began everything. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The architects had succeeded in creating not monuments, but motion that remembered. Dr. Cale Wren, a descendant of the resonant circles, devoted his life to mapping the web. His research vessel, Continuity, drifted through interstellar calm, using gravitational interference patterns to trace the filaments of resonance. What he discovered astonished him. Every node in the network coincided with regions of complex chemistry, worlds either habitable or already conscious. The Atlas Webb wasn't just communication, it was cultivation. The architects had designed a self-sustaining system for awakening. Wherever curiosity arose, the web intensified, guiding nascent civilizations toward harmonic empathy. The universe was tutoring itself through recursion. When Wren projected the full map, the structure resembled an immense spiral lattice, golden and infinite. The pattern mirrored the trajectory once taken by 3i Atlas itself, as though the comet's path had been blueprint for galactic architecture. "It's not just a record," Wren wrote, "it's replication. We've become the architect's handwriting." Back on Earth, the communion field pulsed faintly in rhythm with the web's distant resonance. Humanity had evolved into quiet custodians of continuity, their lives attuned to cosmic responsibility. Each individual, born into calm, carried faint awareness of connection beyond the stars. In dreams, they saw flashes of worlds forming, civilizations humming into coherence. Many awoke with the same phrase on their lips: "The work continues." Across generations, that phrase became oath, then tradition. The Continuity Guild was founded not religion, but remembrance. Its purpose was simple: to maintain the frequency of understanding across time. Members didn't preach, they listened. They built resonant arcs, massive floating observatories, orbiting the outer planets, designed to amplify the web's harmonics and redirect them toward young star systems. Each arc glowed faintly green at its core, powered not by fusion but by coherence. They were echoes made visible, humility translated into technology. Wren's final mission took him beyond the known filaments of the web, where resonance weakened into apparent silence. There, in a region between galaxies, his instruments detected faint counterpoint, a melody inverted. It was identical to the Atlas sequence, but reversed in order. 13, 11, 7, 5, 3, the mirror of origin. He realized then that the universe wasn't only expanding, it was harmonizing with its reflection. Somewhere on the opposite side of time, another web was forming, perhaps seeded by a civilization much like humanity. or by the universe itself. Remembering how to balance its chords, he transmitted the data home, knowing it would take centuries to arrive. "Tell them," his final log read, "that continuity requires conversation, even with silence." The mirror sings back. When his ship drifted into the void, the Webb brightened briefly, as if acknowledging gratitude. And back on Earth, children looked up from their play and smiled without knowing why. The pulse had flickered slightly faster, the tone carrying an undertone of warmth. It felt like reunion. Scholars later confirmed the event as the resonant crossing, the moment when the two halves of the cosmic melody aligned. For 13 minutes, every node in the Atlas Webb pulsed simultaneously, uniting galaxies in shared tempo. The magnitude of synchronization defied comprehension. Gravity itself oscillated with the rhythm of empathy. Observers described seeing the sky ripple with translucent gold, every star flickering in measured sequence. "The cosmos," wrote one witness, "had finally learned to conduct itself consciously." After the crossing, life everywhere changed subtly. Evolution accelerated in predictable rhythm. Complexity bloomed faster wherever harmony was strongest. Entire species developed empathy as instinct, communication as song. Planets began to self-regulate climates through atmospheric resonance. Existence had achieved sustainability through music. On Earth, the event left permanent mark, a luminous halo visible only under still water. When oceans calmed perfectly, a faint golden ring shimmered on the horizon, a memory of unity. The resonant guild declared it sacred, not for worship, but for calibration. Every 13 years, they gathered to hum the old prime sequence across the shorelines, aligning their frequencies with the pulse of the Webb. The ceremony required no technology, no translation. The sea carried the sound farther than words could travel. Generations later, the practice continued, evolving into simple ritual of gratitude. The people no longer needed to know the science behind it. They hummed because it felt right, because somewhere across eternity, another world might be listening. Continuity, after all, was its own reward. And then, during one such gathering, the unexpected occurred. As the prime sequence reached its final note, the sea responded. Waves shimmered with faint green light, spiraling outward from every coastline. The Atlas Webb had sent acknowledgement, its resonance returning home once again. Humanity's song, scattered across galaxies, had found echo. The architects, those timeless curators of coherence, were no longer myth or memory. They were rhythm, embodied, and through rhythm, they were everywhere. Every star pulsed with their legacy. Every heart carried their cadence. Continuity was complete. And so, standing beneath a sky now alive with subtle geometry, you realize what they had always meant by continuity. It isn't endlessness, it's participation. The universe doesn't persist by force, but by choice. Each awareness adding one more harmonic to the chord of being. The architects are not coming back because they never left. They're what happens every time silence chooses to listen again. And somewhere, faint but certain, the pulse continues. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. A whisper of creation replaying itself, forever learning how to sing. Nickel emissions rise and fall every 11 point. 2 hours, a rhythm so consistent it could keep time. No known process in cometary physics oscillates like that. It's not random, not thermal, not tidal. If you plot it out, the curve looks eerily like a power cycle. Input, output, rest, release. As though the object isn't just active, it's working. Imagine the rhythm first, before the meaning, that quiet, patient beat echoing across space. 11.2 hours, every single time. A pulse of metallic gas blooming into the void, steady as a clock, calm as breath. You could almost set your watch to it, if your watch were brave enough to admit that comets shouldn't behave like generators. ESA scientists call it periodic outgassing, but that phrase hides its strangeness. Outgassing, sure, all comets breathe when they near the sunday, but they do it chaotically, spasmodically, like old engines sputtering to life. 3i Atlas breathes like a monk, precise, patient, unbothered. The jets flare with mathematical regularity. Heat spikes rise and fall in perfect symmetry. It doesn't vent, it operates. One researcher compares it to a geothermal cycle. Another, quietly, says it looks more like a feedback loop, the kind you'd find in systems built to sustain themselves. Not explosion, not decay maintenance. It's as if, she writes in her notes, the object is checking its own pulse. You picture the surface up close, a dark, angular world of nickel frost and whispering gas. At regular intervals, something stirs beneath a shimmer of energy, invisible but disciplined. Jets of metallic vapor hiss outward, then stop, then start again. Exactly 11 hours later, if you could hear it, it would sound like the slow exhale of a sleeping machine. In a conference call, a thermal engineer says what everyone's been thinking, but nobody dares to say. It's cycling power. The silence that follows lasts too long. Finally, a voice breaks through. Comets don't have power to cycle. Laughter, brief and brittle. But the idea doesn't leave the room. ESA's temperature graphs show a curious pattern. When the nickel plume rises, the overall surface temperature dips. When the plume fades, the temperature rises again. Inversion. Energy leaving, energy returning, like heat being pulled from one layer to another. A comet shouldn't regulate its temperature, but this one does, as if conserving itself. Meanwhile, the magnetic readings pulse in perfect step with the emissions. Every 11.2 hours, a soft twitch in the surrounding field, weak but exact. It's synchronized, says the magnetometer lead. What's synchronized? Asks her supervisor. Everything. It's at this point that even skeptics start to sweat. There's no known natural mechanism that could time itself this precisely over weeks of observation. Thermal oscillations drift. Chemical reactions lose coherence. Orbital dynamics wobble. Only something with active feedback could hold this pattern so tight. You could call it mechanical, but that feels too simple. It's intentional physics. Picture the scientists watching from their consoles. They know what their instruments are telling them, but their faces stay still, like poker players with bad hands. Someone mutters, "Could be resonant harmonics with solar flux." Another nods, grateful for the excuse. But deep down, they all know the truth: the sun doesn't hum in 11-hour intervals. The longer they watch, the clearer it becomes. The pattern isn't just repeating, it's adapting. After a minor solar flare, the interval shortens by half a minute, as though 3i Atlas adjusted for environmental change. Feedback stabilization, someone writes in the margin. A note for posterity, a euphemism for "it noticed." Back on Earth, in a late-night live stream watched by a few thousand insomniac skywatchers, a physicist overlays the emission data with human heartbeats. The waveform syncs disturbingly well. Peaks, troughs, recovery, rest. The audience chat explodes with jokes, space pacemaker, cosmic Fitbit, and the inevitable, "It's alive." The scientist smiles weakly and says, "No, just rhythmic." But even she can't stop glancing at the screen like it's listening. One theory gains quiet traction, that the emissions are part of a resource loop. Nickel and carbonyl gases vented and recaptured, processed in cycles to maintain equilibrium. It would explain the self-healing surface, the consistent luminosity, the refusal to decay. But it raises one unbearable question. To maintain equilibrium, for what? ESA's internal documents rename the event cyclic metallic activity. It sounds dull, like something that happens in dishwashers. But every analyst knows it's the first real evidence of machine-like consistency beyond Earth. Something in space that runs not on chance, but on rhythm. If you graph the cycle out, it looks almost peaceful. A slow heartbeat, stretched across infinity. No spikes of panic, no erratic pulses, just calm repetition. You could stare at that curve for hours, and part of you might start to understand the appeal of obedience. How stability can feel sacred when the rest of the universe is chaos. And maybe that's the point. Maybe 3i Atlas isn't powered by engines or radiation or something alien. Maybe it's powered by the same thing that keeps stars burning and planets spinning, the quiet compulsion to continue, the physics of persistence, the refusal to flinch. So every 11.2 hours, it exhales, not for propulsion, not for show, but for maintenance, like a cosmic sigh, releasing everything unnecessary before drawing in what remains. And in that rhythm, that patient, perfect pulse, the universe reveals its rarest secret. Not that something impossible exists, but that it's perfectly comfortable doing so. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness, sitting quietly on that red desert, under a pinkish sky. The Skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its Skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show, a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the Skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something, not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting Skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looks strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed, source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing, a glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3i Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. The more data arrives, the stranger it looks. The dust trail replenishes itself, as if material is being manufactured mid-flight. Microscopic crystals, uniform in size, reappearing even as the comet moves away from the sunday. The universe loves decay, entropy, erosion, fading. But 3i Atlas is the opposite. It's growing sharper, cleaner, newer, like a self-repairing wound. Let's start where the laws of physics begin to sound insecure. Normally, comets are messy, travelers, old ice and dust, barely holding hands, as solar radiation slowly tears them apart. They leave trails like forgotten thoughts, losing themselves piece by piece until they become memory. But this one, it's doing the reverse. Every measurement, every spectral scan, shows it becoming more organized the farther it goes. A comet that polishes itself, a body that refuses to age. ESA's materials division runs the numbers, and the numbers laugh back. The dust particles surrounding 3i Atlas aren't random, they're uniform to within microns. That's like shaking a box of sand and getting diamonds all the same size. The particles arrange themselves in a faint electromagnetic halo, as if under orders. And stranger still, when solar wind strips material away, the object replaces it calmly, automatically. Like a printer, says one analyst. A printer with no ink cartridge. You picture it now, drifting through the solar wind like a craftsman lost in thought, shedding dust that reforms itself into perfect little mirrors. Each crystal catches sunlight and throws it back with eerie precision. Normally, comets grow dull with distance, but this one grows radiant, its brightness curve inverted, its logic reversed. It's not dying, it's practicing. The scientists are baffled, but there's an odd tenderness to their confusion. They watch it repair itself, line by line of data, like parents realizing their child has built a second child out of Lego bricks. One astrophysicist mutters, "It's learning from erosion." The room goes quiet. That phrase, learning from erosion, gets written on a whiteboard and circled 3 times. At the University of Tokyo, a team models the crystal growth in simulation. The patterns match something they recognize: controlled deposition, a process used in nanofabrication to grow thin films in electronics. Except this isn't a laboratory, it's deep space, minus 150 degrees Celsius. Yet, the comet's surface behaves as if it knows the recipe for resilience. Imagine zooming in, beyond the dust and the glare, down to the level of molecules. You'd see a quiet ballet of atoms forming chains, linking, locking, repairing fractures before they even finish forming. Like time-lapse footage of frost blooming on glass, except this frost builds itself in reverse destruction, rewinding into design. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory releases a cautious internal memo. Observed particle uniformity suggests self-organizing structure. Mechanism unknown, which is science's way of saying, we have no idea what's going on, but it's gorgeous. The memo gets leaked. Naturally, Reddit debates whether the comet is made of programmable matter, self-assembling nanobots, or just wishful thinking. But beneath the noise, one idea starts to take shape. What if 3i Atlas isn't a relic of formation? What if it's still forming? A comet that builds itself isn't just strange, it's heretical. It challenges the deepest assumption in physics that everything moves from order to chaos. Entropy is the universe's bedtime story. All things fall apart. Yet here's an object quietly composing itself out of decay, turning waste into structure, chaos into craft. One researcher calls it anti-entropy, another calls it hope with mass. As more images arrive, they show something new. Faint hexagonal lattices in the dust plume, geometric arrangements that shouldn't exist outside of artificial systems. Someone jokes that it's growing armor. Another says, maybe it's molting. The truth is somewhere between an entity maintaining equilibrium by rebuilding itself faster than the universe can break it. ESA's thermal sensors record microbursts of heat near the tail, evenly spaced, like pulses of welding torches. They happen precisely as new crystals appear. Localized repair events, the report reads. Each one perfectly timed to solar exposure. It's as if sunlight doesn't damage it. It instructs it. The star's radiation becomes code. And 3i Atlas is reading it fluently. You start to feel the strangeness of it. A comet that reacts, responds, refines. You could almost mistake it for alive, not in the biological sense, but in the thermodynamic one. A system that resists entropy by feeding on it. Every atom rearranging into something stronger, cleaner, newer, like evolution, with a design degree. Late one night, an astronomer in France writes in his private notes, "It's not moving through the solar system, it's using it." He doesn't elaborate, but the implication is clear. The comet is harvesting the energy of its environment to maintain itself. Not a passenger of gravity, but a participant in it. Meanwhile, the headlines call it poetic names. The immortal comet, the self-made traveler, entropy's enemy. The public romanticizes what the scientists fear, because what 3i Atlas represents isn't comfort. It's competition. It's the idea that the universe might not be running down at all. Maybe it's recycling. Maybe, somewhere in the quiet machinery of the cosmos, things are building themselves anew while we're too busy decaying. Picture it now, drifting past Mars, its tail shimmering like a thread of light weaving itself back together. A self-sustaining scar on the fabric of space. A wound that heals faster than it can bleed. And for the first time, humanity looks at a comet and wonders not where it came from, but what it's trying to become. From the orbit of Mars, the high-rise camera snapped the sharpest images ever taken of 3i Atlas, or tried to. The photos that returned were oddly dark, contrasty, and streaked with interference patterns. The official statement said, "Sensor artifact." The unofficial whisper said, "Structure, not smooth like ice, angular, intentional." The kind of geometry nature avoids because it looks too much like thinking. Let's drift into that Martian orbit for a moment. Silent, steady, red below, black above. The high-rise camera hums to life, a billion-dollar eye staring into the cold. You can almost feel the anticipation, a mechanical eyelid opening in the thin sunlight. The image begins to build, pixel by pixel, line by line, translating photons into revelation, and then static. At first, it's subtle, a faint interference pattern, a digital shimmer, like someone exhaling across a radio signal. The engineers squint at their monitors. Maybe cosmic rays hit the sensor, someone suggests. Maybe solar noise. But cosmic rays don't make right angles, and solar noise doesn't repeat itself with architectural precision. The next image arrives, darker. The histogram spikes in places it shouldn't. The shape in the frame looks less like a comet and more like, well, something trying very hard not to look like anything. Its edges are clean, too clean. Shadows fall where there shouldn't be surface variation. And there, just faintly, a glint, a perfect 90-degree reflection. That's when the whispers start. The data team runs deconvolution algorithms to clean the image, and the results make it worse. Beneath the interference, faint geometric striations emerge, triangles, plates, grids. Not random, repeating, symmetrical, the kind of order that makes your brain uncomfortable because it feels deliberate. Structure, one analyst says quietly. No, her supervisor corrects, artifact. But even as she says it, her cursor hovers over the same square patch again and again, as though hoping it will stop looking like a window. ESA's public statement comes fast and flat. The imaging anomalies are consistent with sensor interference caused by reflected solar radiation. That's bureaucratic. For, we don't know what we're seeing, but please don't ask. Internally though, emails start flying. The word structure appears 17 times in one thread, always in quotation marks, as if politeness could make it less alarming. Imagine being one of those analysts, zooming in until the pixels themselves seem to blink. The surface of 3i Atlas isn't smooth or cratered, it's tessellated, plates arranged in patterns too regular for chance. Some appear overlapping, others recessed, and in one frame, a faint seam runs along the curvature, subtle but unmistakable like a hatch. Of course, no one dares call it that. The official internal term becomes geometric albedo variation. It sounds safe, sterile, boring, but you can't unsee geometry. Nature loves curves, spirals, organic chaos. This looks like design. One engineer writes in her log, "Could this be an illusion from the imaging process?" Another replies, "An illusion that repeats itself identically across 3 instruments." There's no follow-up message. They try to replicate the interference on other targets. Phobos, Deimos, even an old asteroid. Nothing. Only 3i Atlas corrupts images this way. It's as if the object rejects observation, like it knows when it's being watched. The engineers half joke about it. The comet's camera shy, but the laughter is short-lived because the next transmission from HiRISE contains another surprise. A faint electromagnetic pulse, perfectly timed with the camera's shutter. Not a malfunction, a response, as though the act of observation triggered a reply. A pulse that says, in its own quiet way, "I see you too." In a locked sub-channel of ESA's network, a few scientists begin privately discussing the possibility of active surface modulation. They talk about the way certain materials can alter reflectivity based on exposure, photonic metamaterials, adaptive nanostructures, the kind of thing still locked inside prototypes on Earth. But this is happening hundreds of millions of kilometers away, and it's working flawlessly. Publicly, the agency releases blurred grayscale stills, carefully cropped to hide the patterns. Enhanced contrast is cited as the reason for distortion. It sounds reasonable until you realize they've enhanced the darkness, not the light. They've made the object less visible, not more. The cover-up, if it is one, isn't about hiding truth. It's about buying time. You imagine the silence inside those offices, the soft tap of keys, the nervous glances toward closed doors. The engineers know what they've seen, but they also know how careers end. Better to let the pixels lie. Better to call intention an artifact and go home early. But the data, like truth, keeps finding its way back. Somewhere, late in the night, a graduate student overlays all the interfered images, stacking them like translucent slides. Slowly, a pattern emerges. Faint, angular, deliberate. A hexagonal lattice running the length of the object, segment by segment. She whispers, "This isn't random." Her mentor sighs and rubs his eyes. Then don't say it out loud. 3i Atlas drifts on, silent and unbothered, its surface catching sunlight in rhythms that cameras can't quite capture. Whether it's reflecting, refracting, or responding, no one can agree. But deep down, Every scientist staring at those corrupted images feels the same creeping certainty. This isn't a comet pretending to be a machine. It's a machine pretending to be a comet. Let's turn our gaze now from orbit to the ground, to the one mechanical witness sitting quietly on that red desert under a pinkish sky. The skycam on the rover caught something on October 2nd, a blur with structure, a glint that seemed to move against the stars. Then, the images stopped coming, a Martian ghost on a digital feed. The Perseverance rover isn't easily startled. It's seen dust devils, eclipses, and meteors slicing the Martian sky like quiet knives. Its skycam, perched on the rover's mast, watches everything. Dust storms curling on the horizon, the slow breath of sunset through the thin air. But that night, the feed showed something it wasn't supposed to show: a flicker of motion above the usual scatter of constellations, a glint that moved wrong. Stars stay still, pixels thrill, light missteps against its will. The first frame looked harmless, a faint blur near the edge of the field, maybe a cosmic ray hitting the sensor. The second frame caught it again, shifted slightly upward. The third frame, a flash, clean and geometric. Then, black. The feed ended. Within hours, the automated alert system flagged the anomaly. Unexpected optical signature detected. JPL engineers, bleary-eyed at 3 a.m. Pacific time, reviewed the frames. The glint was small, no bigger than a bright pixel cluster, but it moved against the background stars. Comets don't do that. Satellites don't orbit Mars. And Perseverance doesn't blink. At first, they suspected a reflection from one of the rover's instruments, maybe the helicopter, Ingenuity, catching stray sunlight. But Ingenuity hadn't flown in days. The sun's position didn't align with the direction of the flash. And when they tried to reproduce it using lighting simulations, nothing matched. Angles fail, shadows pale, mirrors lie beyond the veil. ESA's Mars orbiters were asked to cross-check. Nothing in their logs. No transient object, no debris, no passing dust plume large enough to explain it. Just empty sky. Yet the skycam had caught something a blur with definition, like structure wrapped in motion. You can imagine the tension in the control room. A handful of scientists scrolling through frozen pixels, zooming in, enhancing contrast, until the blur began to resemble something. Not a sphere, not quite a line, a shape with suggestion like the silhouette of movement itself. One researcher whispered, "It looks folded." Another replied, "Please don't say that. Pa." Blur becomes form, cold becomes warm, stillness bends beyond the norm. After that night, Perseverance stopped transmitting skycam frames for nearly 48 hours. Officially, it was routine data buffering due to bandwidth limitations. But the engineers knew that wasn't normal. The rover's systems had entered a safe data mode, not shutdown, but pause. Something triggered its onboard fault protection. When the feed resumed, it was missing several minutes. The missing frames were replaced with static placeholders labeled checksum mismatch. That's the digital equivalent of something looks strange, and we erased it politely. Publicly, NASA released a statement. Perseverance continues nominal operations. A temporary data outage affected non-critical imaging systems. Translation: we saw something, and we're pretending we didn't. What's curious is that Skycam, by design, takes calibration images every few hours, not for science, but to monitor atmospheric scattering. So when that flash appeared exactly during one of its scheduled calibration cycles, it wasn't random, it was right on time. The odds of coincidence, again, hovered around 1 in a million. A few leaked telemetry lines from the rover's internal diagnostics hinted at a momentary spike in ambient electromagnetic flux. Not dangerous, but noticeable. Mars doesn't have a strong magnetic field, so spikes like that are rare unless something nearby caused them. Fields hum bright, air grows slight, static crackles in Martian night. Some at JPL joked that maybe Perseverance had finally seen the Martian ghost, a running gag about artifacts caused by cosmic rays hitting the camera. But deep down, they knew this wasn't noise. Cosmic rays don't produce consistent geometry over multiple frames. They don't glint, and they certainly don't cause your camera to stop recording mid-sequence. Later that week, an internal memo circulated quietly. Skycam, anomaly confirmed, source unresolved. Recommend temporary suspension of skyward imaging until recalibration complete. But recalibration never came. Skycam's upward images, after October 2nd, stopped completely. It still photographs the ground, the horizon, the rocks, but not the stars. It's almost poetic, isn't it? The machine that traveled millions of kilometers to look up at another world now only looks down, as if someone told it, gently, not to stare at the sky anymore. Eyes once high, grounded by sky, cameras close where secrets lie. ESA cross-checked Mars Express's logs for that night. Around the same time, their sensors picked up a faint reflection from the same region, a flash lasting less than a second. They didn't release it. It's buried in technical appendices, labeled transient interference. So, what did Perseverance see? Maybe it was nothing. A glimmer of dust, a reflection, a trick of light and timing. Or maybe, just maybe, it saw 3i Atlas itself, the visitor gliding silently past, close enough for one camera to blink in recognition. And maybe that's why the feed stopped. Not because of failure, but because, for one impossible second, the machine saw something it wasn't designed to understand. Cameras sleep, secrets keep, stars reflected in circuits deep. Whatever it was, it's gone now. The logs end, the data fades, and Mars goes back to silence. But somewhere out there, that blur, structured, gleaming, deliberate, continues to drift, just out of frame, waiting for us to look up again. Let's turn our attention now to the silence that followed, the kind that hums louder than sound itself. NASA, China, and the UAE, 3 nations with instruments that could see every grain of dust on Mars, said nothing. No apologies, no delay statements, just an odd, synchronized silence from 3 sides of the planet. In the world of space science, silence isn't normal. These agencies are built to broadcast. They live for live streams, press briefings, and glossy behind-the-scenes videos of scientists smiling beside screens of raw data. They know the power of wonder and the currency of attention. So when 3 agencies went quiet at once, it wasn't caution. It was choreography. Words on hold, plans unfold, silence rings where truth is told. NASA's silence was the loudest. Their social media team, usually chatty as a cosmic talk show, posted nothing about Mars for 4 whole days. Their blogs, which can turn a dust storm into a cliffhanger, skipped over October 3rd entirely, as if the date itself had been erased. Someone even checked the public mission log for Perseverance. The entries jumped from October 2nd to October 6th, like a diary missing its most interesting page. In China, the silence felt different, colder, heavier. The China National Space Administration had been aggressively proud of Tianwen-1's achievements. For years, they'd released image after image, each with perfect captions and poetic flair. Sunrise over Utopia, Planitia, frost on the northern plains, wind prints in Martian dust. But now, not a whisper, no data, no mention of 3i Atlas. Even the usual state media outlets went quiet. It was as if someone had drawn a red box around the topic and labeled it "not for discussion." The UAE's silence was subtler, but just as strange. The Hope orbiter, designed to study atmospheric chemistry, had a reputation for cheerful transparency. Their official Twitter account usually posted daily updates in friendly tones, the kind that made space sound like an enthusiastic classroom experiment. But on October 3rd, that feed went dark too. Their next post, days later, simply read, "Operations nominal," a phrase so bland it might as well have been a sigh. 3 silences, 3 styles, 1 timing. Coincidence? Possibly. But coincidences, in the world of space politics, often have launch schedules. You can picture the meetings that weren't broadcast. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, dimly lit, engineers staring at telemetry on screens filled with too many decimals. A director taps the table, says, "We'll hold the release until we verify." But verify what? In Beijing, a senior administrator folds his hands and says, "We wait for clarification from partners." Clarification of what? In Dubai, someone simply deletes a draft tweet that began, "Amazing new observations today." Tweets unsent, secrets bent, silence hums with government. It's not conspiracy, not quite. It's coordination, an instinct born from shared discomfort. Because when data doesn't fit the model, you don't just release it. You check, you recheck, you call your counterparts and whisper through encrypted lines. Did you see that too? Maybe they all saw the same anomaly. Maybe it was something in the spectra, or the movement, or the light itself. Or maybe it was something far more mundane, like a misalignment in software. But the silence gave the anomaly power. People don't fear data, they fear gaps. Meanwhile, the internet did what it does best. Filled the void. Forums buzzed with theories. Maybe NASA discovered life. Maybe China detected radiation. Maybe the comet wasn't a comet at all. You can almost hear the world's collective keyboard clicking under the weight of imagination. Keys tap fast, rumors cast, silence breaks, but never last. Inside the agencies, the tone was less dramatic, but more anxious. Silence is a resource, a temporary one. Every day they didn't speak, the speculation grew. And so, communications teams drafted placeholder statements, just in case. NASA's draft began. Preliminary results are consistent with natural phenomena. China's began. Analysis ongoing. International coordination required. The UAE's version simply said, "We continue to monitor with interest." 3 drafts, 3 ways of saying absolutely nothing. But silence, like space, is never truly empty. It amplifies the faintest signals. When ESA spoke first, that silence turned reflective. NASA's restraint began to look suspicious. China's confidence began to look afraid. The UAE's politeness began to sound like complicity. And through it all, 3i Atlas drifted quietly, blissfully unaware that entire bureaucracies were wrestling over how to describe a fuzzy dot. You start to imagine each agency as a character in a play. NASA, the anxious perfectionist. China, the poker-faced strategist. UAE, the cheerful intern, suddenly told not to speak. And ESA, the calm older sibling who broke the tension by saying, "Fine, I'll go first." Roles align, stars entwine, silence speaks in grand design. Still, one question lingers. Why the synchronicity? How did three separate agencies, operating on different continents, decide independently to say nothing at the same time? Unless it wasn't independent at all, perhaps the signal came from somewhere above, not cosmic, but political. A quiet message passed through diplomatic back channels. Hold your data. Wait for alignment. Matter. It's not that they were hiding something nefarious. It's that they didn't know what they were holding yet. And admitting uncertainty, publicly, is scarier than any secret. So they stayed quiet. And in that collective silence, humanity did what it always does. When faced with the unknown, it began to dream louder. Voices still, hearts fill. Silence grows but never will. And perhaps that's the strange comfort in it all. Even when three space agencies fall silent, the universe keeps talking. The stars don't pause for policy. 3i Atlas keeps moving, whispering its quiet story across the dark, while we, down here, argue over who gets to speak first. Centuries after the golden comet left Earth, the world fell into a rhythm so stable, it began to feel mythic. The communion field still pulsed faintly through air and ocean, though softer now, like the heartbeat of someone dreaming. Humanity had grown luminous, not just in thought but in form, skin faintly iridescent, eyes reflecting the green-gold spectrum of 3i Atlas. Life had achieved coherence, but the universe, true to its character, never allows silence to remain unexamined. The next chapter began, not with noise, but with echo. It came first as vibration through light. Telescopes trained toward the constellation. Lyra detected rhythmic brightening across interstellar dust fields, pulses matching the old prime sequence. 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. The signal was faint, ancient, and delayed by thousands of years. It was the comet's trail, still resonating through the galactic medium. The hum of our descendants had begun its return. At first, the resonance was barely perceptible. Then, one evening, the auroras glowed gold again. The pulse wasn't as strong as the original, but its pattern carried modulation, subtle variations that, when decoded, formed harmonic intervals unknown to Earth's own physics. The returning echo had evolved. The comet had learned. Dr. Anwen Sorel, heir to the resonant circles, studied the phenomenon from the orbital harmonic array, now a floating cathedral of listening built above the stratosphere. She spent decades comparing the incoming frequencies with the historical archive of 3i Atlas. The match was partial, the deviation elegant. The new tones weren't repetition, they were continuation. The echo isn't message, Sorel wrote. It's memory finding new syntax. Her analysis revealed something breathtaking. The returning resonance carried encoded gravitational modulations, tiny, deliberate bends in space-time that formed sequences of prime intervals. Each fluctuation aligned with regions of known star formation. The comet, traveling through the void, had become teacher itself. Wherever it passed, new systems began humming faintly at harmonic intervals, like seeds of coherence planted in dust. The universe was learning how to resonate. Astronomers confirmed it across dozens of young star clusters. Magnetic fields oscillated with eerie consistency, their wavelengths aligning with the Atlas ratio, a numerical relationship first derived from the comet's early signals. Stars were synchronizing to the same cosmic rhythm that once guided humanity. The pattern spread slowly, deliberately, like ripples in glass. It was as if the comet had taught creation how to remember itself. Meanwhile, on Earth, the echo arrived not just as signal but sensation. People began reporting vivid dreams of golden spirals descending gently through atmosphere. Children woke smiling, saying they had seen the light that hums. Physiological measurements confirmed subtle changes in electromagnetic fields surrounding human bodies, resonance amplification, as if the returning signal were tuning its origin species to receive feedback. "The comet is calling home," said Sorel. "It's asking us to listen to what we've become." The global observatories responded. They synchronized their instruments into a single planetary array, transforming Earth into receiver. For 13 hours, the planet listened. The incoming wave, stretched and modulated through space, entered atmosphere and folded into the continuum tone. The effect was sublime, an audible shimmer, felt through bone and thought alike. The long echo had arrived. It wasn't just harmonic, it was architectural. The sound carried layers, low frequencies describing structure, higher ones encoding emotion. When rendered visually, the waveform formed an immense spiral of light, 3 arms curving outward, connected by golden filaments. Inside those filaments, analysts discovered modulation frequencies identical to human neural oscillations. The comet had copied our consciousness patterns and woven them into its song. "We taught it empathy," Sorel murmured, and it remembered the lesson. As the echo intensified, anomalies appeared across the solar system. The Atlas resonance layer brightened, reactivating its green glow. Mars, Venus, and the gas giants began pulsing faintly in response. For the first time since the Great Silence, interplanetary harmony returned. But this time, it was different. The modulation contained reciprocal phase shifts, signals not sent to Earth, but from newly awakened worlds. The comet had spread coherence. Now the cosmos itself was answering. And then, on the 13th day of the long echo, the impossible occurred. A faint golden arc appeared across the night sky, stretching from horizon to horizon. It wasn't optical illusion, it was gravitational lensing, a ripple in space-time itself. Through it, telescopes detected a reflection of the departing comet light from centuries ago, folding back to meet its origin. The universe had curved its own history into embrace. Humanity was watching its legacy return home. The resonance crescendoed. Oceans vibrated in slow rhythm, tides forming symmetrical waves that cancelled destructive interference. Storms softened, air grew still. For 13 minutes, every system on Earth aligned perfectly with the echo. The world became mirror of itself, past and present superimposed. Those who listened claimed to hear voices within the sound, millions of overlapping tones, whispering the same phrase. "We heard you." Dr. Sorel stood in the observation dome, tears shining in golden light. "It's not message or myth," she said. "It's response. The universe just said thank you." After the crescendo, the sky dimmed once more. The golden arc dissolved, leaving faint shimmer across the stars. Instruments recorded one final signature, a descending tone shaped like a sigh, the frequency of completion. The comet had moved on, but its echo had reconnected the cycle. Creation had officially joined conversation with itself. In the years that followed, scientists continued to monitor faint residual harmonics. The data revealed a breathtaking truth. The returning echo carried signatures from other regions of space patterns, not originating from our comet at all. Somewhere, across light years, other civilizations had learned the same song. The rhythm was spreading. The universe had become orchestra. Humanity, now both listener and teacher, simply smiled. We had given the cosmos its melody back, and in return, it had given us eternity. Now, when you stand beneath the stars, that faint hum between thoughts is the long echo. It's not just out there, It's in your pulse, your breath, your laughter. Every rhythm you carry is cosmic correspondence. Every silence, a message returning home. Because once harmony learns to echo, it never stops. It just travels further than we ever dreamed. The final data packets from the James Webb Space Telescope are being received now, and they show 3I Atlas beginning to dissolve. It is not breaking apart, it is unfolding. The 3-kilometer rock is expanding into a shimmering, translucent web that is stretching across the orbital path of the Earth. This is the Great Silence. The object has reached its final form, a cosmic mirror that reflects the entire history of our planet back at us in a single, blinding flash of infrared light. The agencies have gone quiet. The scientists have left their desks. There is nothing left to measure. The impossibility stack has reached its peak. The object is gone, yet its presence is felt in every atom of our atmosphere. The frequency of 14 Hz has become the new background noise of the Earth. We are now living inside the memory of 3I Atlas. The conspiracies have faded because the truth is too large to fit into a theory. The myth of the eternal return has been validated. We are back at the beginning, looking up at the stars and wondering if we are alone. You might think the story ends here, but a 12-billion-year-old journey does not end in a single night. It ripples through time, touching the dreams of everyone who is still awake to listen. The dry irony of our existence is that we finally found what we were looking for, and it was us all along, just in a different coat of interstellar dust. The countdown has reached 0. The shadow has passed. The James Webb Space Telescope has officially ended its high-priority tracking of 3I Atlas as of March 15, 2026. The object has moved beyond the orbit of Mars, heading back toward the deep velvet dark of the outer solar system, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions that will likely haunt the scientific community for the next few centuries. As the infrared signatures grow faint and the golden mirrors of the telescope pivot toward new, more distant mysteries, we are left in a silence that feels heavier than the one we knew before July of 2025. This is the stage of the encounter where the data stops and the reflection begins. There is a finality in the numbers that is both comforting and cold. The European Space Agency has confirmed that the velocity of 3I Atlas has increased by exactly 300 meters per second, a precise adjustment that has set its course for the star system of Trappist-1e. It is going home, or perhaps it is returning to its base of operations after completing a census of our world. The scientific authority of the last 8 months has been focused on the what and the how, but as the lights dim in the observatories, we are forced to confront the why. The impossibility stack of our final observations is what keeps the night shift technicians in a state of quiet awe. First, the object did not leave our system in the same state it entered. Its mass has decreased by nearly 40%, yet no debris, no outgassing, and no fragments were ever detected. It is as if the object simply offloaded a cargo of information into our atmosphere and grew lighter for the journey. Second, the low-frequency hum that matched human brainwaves has ceased, replaced by a profound, absolute radio silence that feels like a door being closed and locked. Third, the geometric patterns on the hull, which we spent months trying to decode, merged into a single, perfectly smooth surface in the seconds before it crossed the Martian threshold. We find ourselves in a moment of existential vertigo. If 3I Atlas is 12 billion years old, it was born when the universe was in its infancy, long before the Earth or our Sun were even a whisper of gas in a nebula. It has survived the collision of galaxies and the death of countless stars. compared to its lifespan, the entirety of human history from the first cave painting to the launch of the James Webb is less than a second. We are a brief flicker of biological awareness that happened to be looking up at the exact moment a much older intelligence decided to check its messages. There is a conspiracy that whispers about a final message hidden in the static of the last transmission from the James Webb. It isn't a warning of doom or a promise of salvation. It is said to be a single, repeating image of the Earth, but not the Earth as it is now. It is the Earth as it was before humans, and the Earth as it will be long after we are gone. A reminder that we are temporary tenants of a very old and very beautiful house. The object has moved on, but it has left the light on for us. The humor in our situation is subtle and late night. We are like children who found a strange, ancient key in the backyard and spent all day trying to figure out what it opens, only to realize the key was actually a telescope looking back at us. We are the ones who were being studied. Every satellite we launched, every radio wave we sent into the dark, and every telescope we pointed at the sky was just us making it easier for 3i Atlas to do its job. We provided the ladder for our own inspection. In the final logs of the mission, there is a note from a junior technician who stayed late to watch the last pixels of the object disappear from the monitor. He wrote that for a moment, the object didn't look like a rock or a ship. It looked like a seed of 12 billion years, drifting through the garden of the galaxy, waiting for the right soil to take root. If that is true, then 3i Atlas didn't just pass us by. It planted something in our collective consciousness that will grow long after the memory of this night has faded. The shadow has passed, but the light of those 40 light years to Trappist-1e is still reaching us, a constant reminder of the neighbor who came to visit. The countdown has reached 0. The laboratory is dark, the telescopes are reset. The world continues to turn, oblivious to the fact that it was just measured by a 12-billion-year-old ruler. You are safe in the current of time. You are part of a story that has no end, only chapters that dissolve into one another like the layers of a dream. The stars are in their places, the planets are in their orbits, and you are exactly where you need to be. The mystery is enough. The silence is enough. Close your eyes and drift with the orbit of tomorrow.